If you are a woman in your 30s wanting to drop body fat, listen up. I am now 4 weeks into a 6-week fat loss phase, and I am week by week just documenting the journey, sharing my experience of the week, what's been working, where the struggles may have been. Because getting in shape doesn't have to be complicated, but that's the experience so many women have. If you're new here, I'm Rachel, an online coach, helping women get fitter, get stronger, feel more confident in their bodies, and just look and feel better in their 30s and 40s than they ever did in their 20s. So let's get into it. 4-week update. So I'm finally seeing the number 68 on the scales. The scales have not been my friend the past few weeks. Since my period, the scales have not been my friend. But I've been looking and feeling leaner, and my clothes are fitting differently. So it is a case of I'm just ignoring the scales, to be honest. I'm just being consistent, doing what I'm doing. There's 2 weeks left to keep pushing and see where we end up. And I think so many women get stuck in this point where if they're just going for scales, where they feel like it's not working and so they give up. But we are not doing that. Like, this is the thing, right? Because I might get to this end of the 6 weeks. I've got to go into more maintenance levels again, ready for the high rocks I've got 4 weeks after that. But I might decide in a few more months to do another fat loss phase. And this is what a lot of women forget, is they just see that they have to lose body fat and it's like that's the only thing. And then you're like done. And with the conversations I have, women tend to fall into two camps. One camp is very much that, but also it's like they see the fat loss phase as it. Like, if they don't do it, if it's not successful, then they're a failure and like there's no other opportunity again. They don't also see the gradual progression of how to change your physique. It's just like, it's either fat loss or it's not. Or there's the other camp that a lot of women sit in, where they have the mindset of there's another day, there's another opportunity to do it. So they're forever sort of kicking the can down the road, or they don't fully commit and therefore fully see any change. And one of the best ways to approach it is to do it in phases of, I'm going to give this my all for this period of time, and then I'm going to go into a period of maintenance where I'm going to allow myself a bit more freedom, a bit more flexibility. I'm going to focus on building in the gym, and my body's probably still not going to be where I want it to be yet, but that's the focus. And then I'll do another fat loss push again. And they see, and you can see the bigger picture of it, that it's not just fat loss, you're done, and that's that. But it's also not this never-ending, like not quite achieving what you want. So I think it can be really helpful to view it as that, to view it as phases with maintenance breaks, periods of maintenance, even months. Like, I'm not talking just weeks, periods, months of maintenance of pushing hard in the gym. That's often, getting your body into a good place hormonally, eating insufficient food without gaining body fat, and then you can have another push again. And sort of doing that can make the process a lot easier than just being in a perpetual calorie deficit, but never quite sticking to it, so never quite achieving the results that you want. So that's the first thing I've got to say on the matter. Second update is I am definitely feeling hungrier now. This week it's been really noticeable. So I'm just managing that with a lot of high volume foods, plenty of fruit and vegetables, and protein, trying to keep my nutrients high, protein intake high, just good quality nutrition, have that as the focus. And then still keeping in my little carby snack pre-workout so that I've got the most energy pre-workout to see my training through. Because even though I've had higher hunger levels and my energy's been a little bit squiff with that, like general energy's been good, but kind of feeling hunger and feeling like, have I got it in me, has been a bit like, I've actually got rep PBs this week in deadlifts and in bench, and my high rock session felt really good this week as well. I've done quite a bit of running this week, so it's all felt pretty good for the most part. from an energy point of view. Because obviously, like the high rock stuff, that's going to be following this 6 weeks. That's going to be the focus. So it's nice that that feels kind of good. My interval threshold session is the only one that didn't feel great, but there's a lot of mental stuff I have with that session anyway. And I don't know, it's the one session where I wish I had more carbohydrates, but I don't know again if that's more mental and just because I really struggle with the session as it is. But considering 4 weeks into a deficit, and yeah, it's not a huge deficit, to see my training numbers and training performance still moving strong is good to see. And I'm at a decent point in my cycle as well now, and for the next week as well. So it's kind of my last push in the deficit, because then I'm sort of 10 days away from my period. So after maybe another week, I might start having that pre-period strength, energy, overriding, hating everything dip. But yeah, I'm pretty chuffed with that. But the other thing I wanted to touch on that's not really a struggle, but it can be a struggle for people, so I think it's worth mentioning, and it's around the hunger and how I manage it. So I normally wake up about 5 a.m, anywhere between sort of 4:45 and 5:30. That is my usual wake up time, depending on what's going on, and I'm often like hungry when I wake up. But knowing that I've got a long time before I'm training at that point, I actually try and push back the first meal of my day a good while. So I just focus on drinking plenty of water, I have a big mug of tea, and I just get on with work. I'm the most productive then, and my energy and focus is actually still really good at that point, despite feeling hungry. So it allows me to ignore like food noise, so that I'm eating then sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock, because I don't normally train until anywhere between 10 and 11. So then I have a little pre-workout carby snack to top those carbohydrates and just give me a little zhuzh, 6:30, with then a little snaffle pre-bed. So that's the general structure. And because then things are quite well spaced, it means I'm not getting over hungry and therefore making poor choices, or choices that don't really align with the goal at the moment. I'm eating similar things on repeat, so there's not much brain space on that. And I tend to have the food and I'll snack on a bit of fruit, or I'll have my lunch and then follow it with a piece of fruit just to give a bit of a sweet hit. And the same the evening, it's either a bit of yogurt and fruit or just fruit. Fruit and a little bit of dark chocolate melted on top of it. Berries and a little bit of dark chocolate melted on top of it can be delicious, or some peanut butter or something like that. And my evening meal, I tend to focus then on quite a large volume, like a lot of volume in that meal, with vegetables and potatoes and like warming stuff as well, because especially how cold it is at the minute, I find that a really comforting thing to have as sort of my last meal of the day. And I think this is where a lot of people still struggle, because it is the brain space, it's the overthinking, it's wanting numerous different recipes, and really you don't need that. You don't need that distraction when you're trying to just stick to a calorie target and make it as easy for yourself as possible. You actually just want a handful of things that you can eat on repeat, maybe change a few ingredients or how you cook them or the things you serve them with, but that forms the majority of just what you eat. Like I have the same sort of 2 to 3 breakfasts and the same evening meal in just a different combination of things, the same sort of snacks, because I know that when I'm eating more at maintenance and I have more calories to play with, I can have more flexibility with that and maybe experiment a bit more with food. Because yes, we need variety and our gut needs variety in terms of the types of fibre we're having, but you can still get that eating very similar foods, but changing some of the key ingredients. You don't need countless different recipes for that. So that's one of the biggest, easiest wins if you're doing fat loss. And if you know ahead of time and you have a handful of things that are roughly similar calorie content for those meals, you're not going to catch yourself off guard by suddenly going over your calories. So I often talk with the women that I work with, it's like, don't just track as you go. Like, tracking as you go is absolutely fine if you're figuring out calories, if you are at maintenance and you're more just logging to see how you eat, what you eat, and get a rough idea of what's going on. But if you're trying to stick to a number because you want to achieve fat loss, one of the best things you can do is just know ahead of time the general gist of what you're going to be having, not playing catch up and getting to the evening and thinking, oh my god, I've only got like 200 calories for an evening meal now. Like, that's not where you want to be. And today was the first day, so I had went for a run this morning, freezing cold, and had breakfast out, which was a bacon sarnie, a latte, oat latte, I love an oat latte, and half a cinnamon bun. And that's the first time that I've had something like a bit more out there, especially with the cinnamon bun, because the bacon sarnie is actually not that calorific, it wasn't a huge one. But then even the cinnamon bun, and when you're sharing it, and it was the first time that I chose to do that, because again, I don't feel deprived currently because I know this is a short period. So I know that I can have these foods if I want them, but it's just, is it worth it right now? Not really. I don't want to be unnecessarily hungry because I've eaten something that's not particularly filling but has high calorific value. Those are the choices you've got to make. And for me at the minute, it's not really been on my radar, but this morning I really wanted to do that. I chose to do that, and I did that, and I pre-planned that, knowing that I was going to be having breakfast out, and I had an inkling that I may have something, I wasn't quite sure what it would be. I pre-planned my food for the day so that I had a good chunk of calories available for that without it eating into the rest of the day, or like you say, them having to play catch up. So that's a really easy thing that you can do. And again, if you're eating a lot of the same foods and you know what those things look like, you can think, well, that's a good option to have. It's high volume, slightly lower calorie, lunch, evening meal. I've got more to play with for breakfast out. And that's how you can do it. And I don't agree that you should be doing that all the time and trying to do all this like mental maths with everything. But if you want a little bit of flexibility while you're in a fat loss phase, it's very easy to do. So that's the update of week 4. So week 5 next week, like I say, last kind of decent week pre-period. So especially the start of the week should be strong. Let's see what the training plan looks like, how we're progressing, and whether the scale decides to show up to the party. I'll see you in the next video and let you know.